Good evening. Welcome to this week's edition of Behind the Headlines. I'm Regan King and I'm joined as always by my good friend and co-host Simon Barrett. This evening we're going to be discussing the vision behind the multi-billion pound megacity Neom that is being built in Saudi Arabia. It's a futuristic city. The concept features renewable energy. Located in the desert, the city is known simply as the Line, and as we'll see in a little while, there's a reason as to why it is called the Line, but it is 200 meters across, 110 miles long, that is aimed to be the home of some 5 million people. It will have its own digital currency, will be run almost entirely by artificial intelligence with facial recognition cameras everywhere. The question we're asking this evening is this the city of the future, or will it be a dystopian nightmare? Or Simon, could it possibly be both?
I think it could be both. What was extraordinary, I don't know if you remember back to 2020 and we saw some adverts on our television for Neom that appeared on television, something about this new futuristic settlement or civilization that was being built and by the Saudis, and I didn't really kind of know what it was, but after just seeing a little bit more, watching this vision, the Saudi vision for this new city, Neom, it seems that this is the most advanced futuristic city now being built anywhere on the planet. And of course, it does have repercussions for Bible prophecy. It is using all the latest technology and also wants to use technology that hasn't even been built yet. I mean, they're talking about this could cost in the region of over $1 trillion US dollars to actually build. It's meant to be in place by 2030. And we'll just see, but it's extraordinary to think that this is the idea of the future. It's a cashless society where artificial intelligence or AI meets our needs, supplies us with food. You've got robots taking out your rubbish. There's no need for cars because there's a supersonic transportation system that you can go from one end of the line, which is this 5 million capacity city from one end of Saudi Arabia to the other. But also has huge implications for Israel, for Egypt, and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia wants to see this as being the new hub in the Middle East to rival that of Dubai. And it goes definitely into the realms of sci-fi, without a doubt.
Well, as you mentioned, it is the Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman's vision to build this city. He's the primary one spearheading this project, which they aim to have completed by 2030. And they even, though the city has not yet been completed by any means really even close to being completed, it already has been awarded the 2029 Asian Games, which, okay, they haven't been held since 2017 because they are struggling to find people to host, but the very fact that a city that yet doesn't exist has been awarded these Winter Games will be incredible.
Absolutely. So what the idea is something called the Line, which is a 115-mile strip, essentially, a mirrored strip, which is a city that goes from one end of Saudi Arabia pretty much up into the coast that's opposite Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, and of course then very close to Eilat as well in that region of the Middle East. They're planning to build a floating city next to it, as well as an airport next door, and also wanting to develop this kind of mountain range to be a ski resort as well. So, yeah, what they're wanting to is to attract entrepreneurs and you know, the creative type, but also the heart of this is to wean Saudi Arabia off its dependency on oil and use completely renewable energy. And primarily to do that, knowing that, for example, that oil is going to have a shelf life. And this is, I think, quite the incredible vision of Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince and de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, has really brought Saudi Arabia out of the Middle Ages and certainly put it into the 21st century by creating this futuristic style city that is at the center of his vision, which is known as 2030.
Now, the city has this potential to be an amazing gift, really, an amazing prototype of what other cities could be in terms of renewable energy. You rightly said oil has a shelf life. What about when it runs out? If Christ does not return before it runs out and we do not have other systems, other technologies in place, then this way of life that we know it, that reverts back to some pretty basic times. If you want to look at it, you can say a lot of the technology will die, a lot of the infrastructure will implode, and this kind of life that we know it will be drastically different, which is why we do need to recognize the good in exploring alternative energy sources. There's some benefit in that. Of course, in Saudi Arabia, there's no shortage of sunshine, and so you can have a lot of solar energy that will help feed and provide for this city. But at the same time, you can look at the surface level, and the videos that we've seen, they're beautiful videos that you look at and you think that's pretty incredible. On the surface, you look at it and you think, oh, that's they even have greenery. They have this system of that's meant to help the city flourish. It's not meant to be sort of a storage container in the middle of the desert. It's actually meant to be beautiful. But it has the hallmarks of potentially being a future dystopian nightmare. I mean, when I saw the video and was considering some of the ramifications, I was thinking this seems a cross between Star Wars, Dune, and some sort of maybe like Mad Max or something like that. It has the potential to be very, very dangerous. In fact, there's some who are worried that it could turn into some sort of glorified sweatshop.
Of course, I mean, that's the danger, looking at the kind of human rights abuses that are going on with its construction, but also the temperatures as well. I mean, for example, in the summer, it's going to be over 50 degrees heat. So that's extraordinarily hot to actually be building this project. And then in the winter at night, it can be minus 10. So as we saw with the building project for the Qatar World Cup, resulted in a lot of deaths building the infrastructure for the Qatar World Cup. In the same way, I think building the line and this mega futuristic city will also have many deaths attached to it, primarily because of actually building it. But the interesting thing to actually take into account on this is the fact that we're seeing a huge change in Saudi Arabia under the Crown Prince bin Salman. And that ever since June 2007, when his father, the King Salman bin Abdul Aziz Al Saud, appointed his favourite son, Mohammad bin Salman, to be the Crown Prince. The monarch, who's now 86, refers to Mohammed bin Salman as MBS, as he likes to be ruled, is the actual de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia. So in 2018, we saw the prohibition on Saudi women driving cars was actually lifted. Today, it's common to see women behind the wheel in Saudi Arabia, stuck in ideal traffic alongside men, but also like men, they're on their way to work. So we're seeing huge cultural changes taking place in Saudi Arabia right now. For example, on a Saudi boulevard in Riyadh, features elegant restaurants, high-end stores, fitness centers, hotels, fountains, sculptures, and the women have a choice to be veiled or unveiled, and that women go freely about their business with the opposite members of the sex, not like in Tehran, in Iran, with the morality police. So we're already seeing fundamental cultural changes taking place under Mohammed bin Salman's leadership. And of course, the biggest one is his rejection of Wahhabi Islam, which is massive, which is the ideological sect that Saudi Arabia has been built upon.
Well, it's a massive shift if you look at their opposition now to terrorism, even going back 10 years, 20 years, definitely. We would not even be coming close to having this conversation. The idea of having a reasonably peaceful relationship with Western powers, with Israel as well, wasn't there. But they now oppose terrorism. They oppose jihad. They oppose other manifestations. You mentioned Wahhabism, which is a violent Islamic extremist movement that particularly impacts economies as well. So, I mean, in the 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran, the siege of Mecca that same year, what have been termed ultra-Wahhabis, Saudi policy aimed to demonstrate a commitment to destroying the Judeo-Christian West. That was the bedrock foundation ideologically of Saudi policy. That's completely changed. The Muslim World League, MWO, underwritten by the royal family, Saudi royal family, funded madrasas in Pakistan that specifically trained boys for martyrdom. That was the goal. They would take children and train them for martyrdom. Radical imams as well were assigned to mosques around the world out of Saudi. And so there's this horrible heritage that Saudi Arabia has had in the past few decades, but with the appointment of Mohammed bin Salman as ruler, things have begun to change, and there's been progress in relation to the outside world. There's been progress in relation to Israel. There's been progress in relation to opening up the nation, even where Saudi is a tourist destination. They've made these cities across that region attractive for people to go to enjoy experiences, and you can have people from all walks of life, high flyers as well as modest income families, traveling with relative ease to these places. Absolutely. That's the vision as well for Neom.
What's so interesting as well, I think, is the fact that Saudi Arabia and the Islamic Republic of Iran were both at the epicenters of supporting jihad against the West. And what the Saudis would do was to use its huge wealth in terms of the petrodollar to actually fund terrorism around the world, to support Islamic madrads, to teach this very dangerous form of interpretation of Islam known as Wahhabism, that would just teach jihad and violence against the West. But we see that there's been an historic change. For example, 2 years ago, its Secretary General, Mohammed al-Assa, led a delegation of senior Muslim scholars and clerics from 28 different countries to Auschwitz-Birkenau. We see that Saudi Arabia, even though it has not joined the Abraham Accords, is the main player behind that, and they wouldn't have given permission for the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain and Sudan and Morocco to sign that historical agreement with Israel unless it had the blessing of Saudi Arabia. So we can see that things are massively changing. They also see the threat of the Islamic Republic of Iran. But there is no doubt that what they've also come to conclude is that they exported Wahhabism around the world and also threatened the Saudi dynasty itself, which was enough to cause a massive rethink within the ideology of the Crown Prince. So let's have a look now at this excellent news report produced by CBN, asking the very important question: can this man change Saudi Arabia's brand of Islam and survive?
Saudi Arabia's young crown prince wants to bring a kinder and gentler Islam to the desert kingdom. But trying to make it happen could be not only tough, but dangerous. Since coming to power, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has been trying to move Saudi Arabia away from Wahhabism, a literal version of Islam so repressive that it's compared to the ideology of ISIS. Many call it a source of modern Islamic terrorism. The prince's reform plan is part of a program called Vision 2030. intended to remake the Saudi economy and society and to construct a futuristic economic district along the Red Sea coast, costing $500 billion. But reforming Wahhabism will be a major challenge. It's been Saudi Arabia's dominant brand of Islam since its beginning. Apostasy is punishable by death. Women have few rights and only just recently gained the right to drive cars. The open practice of Christianity is illegal. Public beheadings have been routine. Crown Prince Mohammad told the London Guardian newspaper he will return Saudi Arabia to moderate Islam and open the country to all religions.
Only want to go back to what we were, the moderate Islam that is open to the world, open to all the religions.
Mohammed is said to have already sidelined Wahhabi religious leaders who enforce the kingdom's extreme form of Islam, and he believes demographics are on his side.
70% of the Saudi people are less than 30 years old, and quite frankly, we will not waste 30 years of our lives in dealing with extremist ideas. We will destroy them today.
But danger abounds. The last time social reform was attempted in 1979, militants seized the Grand Mosque for 15 days and called for the overthrow of the House of Saud. Hundreds died before commandos reclaimed the site. The same hardline spirit that resisted reform almost 40 years ago is still strong in Saudi Arabia today and could fight to prevent the kind of change the prince wants to bring. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, very helpful insight into some of those changes that we've been discussing, I think, Simon. I mean, some of the changes also see that state sponsorship of terrorism completely retracted, wherein they realized after 2001 that they had created, the MWL representative even said, we created a Frankenstein monster, it went after you, then it came after us. So this is a clear shift away from that extremist ideology. And it's very encouraging, I think, to hear the Crown Prince speak in that way, that is saying we've wasted time, we're not wasting more time on this sort of extremism. Now, in regard to his vision for 2030 for this city, he says, it's my pleasure to present Saudi Arabia's vision for the future. It is an ambitious yet achievable blueprint which expresses our long-term goals and expectations and reflects our country's strengths and capabilities. All success stories start with a vision, and successful visions are based on strong pillars. He then proceeds to outline what those pillars are. The first pillar of our vision is our status as the heart of the Arab and Islamic worlds. And he goes on to pay homage to Allah and to give thanks to Allah for the oil that has been given, for the heritage sites of the two mosques, their sacred sites that include the Kaaba, to which more than 1 billion Muslims turn in prayer. He then goes and builds on with the second pillar, determination to become a global investment powerhouse. Our nation holds strong investment capabilities, which we will harness to stimulate our economy and diversify our revenues, which to some degree I would say, you know, they've expressed an abandonment of Wahhabism. At the same time, there does need to be some consideration of some of the mindset culturally and Quranically as well. But behind this, behind jihad, there are different definitions of it. And economic jihad is a way through which Islam seeks to gain predominance. And so even what they point to here, you can see in their the various investments that are being made in the West, control being taken, and we can think of even football clubs like Man City and Newcastle and other places. Establishing economic dominance is not violent jihad, but it's economic jihad, because it's claiming territory, it's claiming land for Islam. We're thankful it's not the violent kind. At the same time, there needs to be that perspective and that wariness as to, okay, that this doesn't mean a complete shift in what they believe is true. it's a shift in tactic to obtaining that final objective. The third pillar, he goes on to say, is transforming our unique strategic location into a global hub connecting 3 continents, Asia, Europe, and Africa. Our geographic position between key global waterways makes the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia an epicenter of trade and the gateway to the world. Fascinating vision.
Absolutely. He goes on to say that he wants to create a vibrant society, a thriving economy, and an ambitious nation. And these are the 3 pillars of Saudi Arabia mapped out in his expansion of the 2030 vision. But also the Crown Prince Mohammad bin Salman also wants to reduce carbon emissions and economic diversification. In other words, he wants to get Saudi Arabia off its dependency on oil, because that's the main source of revenue for the Saudi state. That has been since the 1930s when Saudi Arabia became independent. So what we see there is he wants to trailblaze the use of renewable energies. And of course, the epicenter of this is his whole vision behind Neom. But he also wants to transform his Middle Eastern country into one of the world's next big hubs for science and technology. And they say that if this pace continues uninterrupted, within the next 10 years, Saudi Arabia will be better recognized as a place that leads global efforts to advance artificial intelligence and cutting-edge innovation than as a land of conflicts. And I also say that Saudi Arabia has been an oil-based economy with a strong government that controls over major economic and social activities. It already possesses 16% of the world's proven petroleum reserves, and oil is the cornerstone of its development. But we're seeing here that with their Vision 2020, this is a radical departure from previous economic policies, but also the direction that Saudi Arabia is taking. We've got another excellent CBN News report to go to now. This one is called Saudi Arabia on a Bold Mission to Transform Its Economy and Culture by 2030.
The major challenge facing Saudi Arabia is implementing Vision 2030. It's an ambitious plan to change Saudi Arabia from an oil-based economy to one based on business investment, technology, and tourism. CBN sat down with Saudi Arabia's Minister of Economy and Planning, Mohammad Al-Tawashi. Can you describe for us what Vision 2030 is?
The Vision 2030 is basically unlocking this potential of Saudi Arabia, diversifying away from oil, having a sustainable, growing economy, engaging the private sector, creating sustainable jobs for the locals, but also having a regional responsibility and a global responsibility as a good citizen of the world.
Dr. Yonatan Freeman of Hebrew University says Saudi Arabia can learn from Israel.
And I think Saudi Arabia is asking Israel, what's your secret? How could you be so successful internationally using your own mind and not some sort of natural resource? So I think what Saudi Arabia is going to learn from us is how do we move ahead without being dependent on just one natural resource.
One main focus of Vision 2030 is tourism. For the first time in its history, Saudi Arabia is allowing tourists from nearly 50 countries to apply for visas beginning this fall.
Tourism is one pillar where it ticks all the boxes. It ticks the diversification box, it ticks the jobs box, balance of payment, meaning people will come and spend money here.
One tourist attraction for people coming to Saudi Arabia would be here at Al Ula. It's the southern capital of the Nabatean people and a UNESCO heritage site. It was part of the ancient trade routes more than 2,000 years ago. Amir Badani is the CEO of the Al Ula Royal Commission.
A place that hasn't been visited, hasn't been studied, and we are committed to fully understand it, preserve it, and share it with the world through an interpretation strategy that turns Al Ula into a one large, engaging, living museum. This is basically the largest living museum in the world today.
But in addition to economic changes, there are dramatic changes in society. One major change in Saudi society can be seen here at this soccer match. Just more than a year ago, for the first time, women were permitted to attend games of the most popular sport in the country. The stadium includes this family section, where husbands with their wives, mothers with their children, or single women can come and enjoy the game. It's another barrier broken as part of Vision 2030.
In the end, what we're seeing all over the Muslim and Arab world is that more and more the local population wants their countries to push for increasing the welfare of those citizens in their countries to be more open to the outside world.
But the changes come with challenges.
One thing that Saudi Arabia has to make sure is that the more they open up, it doesn't cause too much of a challenge by those who are opposed to any sort of approachment with the West, approachment with other religions like Christians. So one of the things that the regime has to be certain about is that they do it gradually.
And the threat of Iran overshadows this economic revolution. On September 14th, Iran targeted Saudi Arabia's main oil processing facility. It cut Saudi's oil production drastically for weeks. But the vision expects to change Saudi society, cut dependence on oil, and offer a new Saudi Arabia to the world. Amir Ahmad Banaja is the CEO of the General Entertainment Authority,
which has a very exciting mission, which is to basically build the entertainment sector in Saudi Arabia.
Banaja works on long-term entertainment projects like Qiddiya, a Six Flags amusement park to be built just outside of Riyadh, the Red Sea Project, developing Saudi Arabia's coastline, and Neom, built as a city of the future. Neom, located here on the shores of the Red Sea, is the largest mega project in the world today, with an estimated cost of $500 billion. And it's the centerpiece for Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030. And all part of what Saudi is now opening and offering to the world.
I think that there is a lot to discover about Saudi Arabia and the diversity and colorfulness. I think people think of Saudi Arabia as hot, camels, sand. I think this is very monotonic view. I encourage everybody to think about Saudi Arabia the way you think about the US. California is nothing like Florida, you know? Utah is nothing like Kansas. So there is a lot of beauty and details. I think the world will come to see the largest living museum in the world being unveiled.
Whether or not Saudi Arabia can achieve Vision 2030 or not will deeply affect the future of the Middle East. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
Well, some very interesting insight there from Chris Mitchell and CBN. Thank you for that. We are asking the question this evening, will Neom be a city of the future or a dystopian nightmare? And at the end of that news report, we saw reference to Neom, which is, it's an incredible project aiming to be complete by 2030. I personally am a bit skeptical as to how that's going to be possible. Certainly, there are questions that we'll get to regarding the humane nature of building this this city and the way they're doing. But under MBS's vision, Saudi Arabia plans to reduce its dependence on oil, diversify its economy, develop public service sectors such as healthcare, recreation, tourism, and education. And the news report that we just saw shows very definitely how the tourism angle is definitely an overdrive. Opening it up, you said, to 50 different passports as a massive step forward, beginning to accomplish increasing measures of peace with various nations that once have been enemies. I mean, the mention of a Six Flags amusement park opening up there almost sold the idea of visiting it to me. But it's one of those things that we have to consider some of the other stuff going on in the background as well. Tell us a little bit about the city of the future.
Well, according to its original plan, Neom, as it's called, was first announced in 2017 as expected to be a stunning tourist destination with advancements in biotech and sustainable energy. The Saudi Public Investment Fund plans to create 1.8 million new jobs in building the metropolis haven. Will function as a stand-alone city with a Neom Bay Airport involved in commercial flights, and by 2030 powered entirely by renewable sources. and this could then provide a precedent for developing nations to implement alternative energy sources. So according to, and I like this report, according to the Sun newspaper, Neom will be like a Jetsons-style ultra-modern metropolis in complete contrast with the other very conservative parts of the desert kingdom. And Saudi Arabia's $500 million private investment fund group, which has purchased Newcastle United, for example, the plans for Neom are so ambitious that some of the technology doesn't even exist yet.
The city is going to be located on the border with Jordan and Egypt and will start welcoming residents and businesses. The projection is by 2025. That's not long to go.
3 years.
Yeah, 3 years. It's being built from scratch, powered by solar and wind, and will be 17 times the size of London in its length. Anyway,
I mean, it's amazing. It's 115 miles long. So if you can imagine this, it's 115 miles long with only 200 meters wide, all kind of mirror reflected. And it can host up to 5 million people. But with the interrail link that they want to create, they want you to be able to travel from one end of Neom to the other end and to be able to do that in 20 minutes. So they're talking about speeds of over 320 miles per hour in order to get from one end of Neom to the other end.
Incredible. Their documents show that they will have flying taxis. I mean, this gets into the Star Wars territory here. I think we are approaching some of that. A vehicle that's, also depicted in things like Blade Runner, Back to the Future. I mean, this is actually closer, I think, to Blade Runner than Star Wars. But in the sense that it's also, I'm looking at it, and while it all sounds very nice to some degree, I think it is headed towards some sort of dystopian like existence.
But also what they want to do is the Saudis want to attract the brightest and the best professionals to the city and create a major commercial hub that is a rival to Dubai in the United Arab Emirates and Doha in Qatar. Also in the document for the outline for Neom, they also want to create, this is bizarre, this is more like the Jetsons actually, robot maids will clean the homes of those highly paid foreign workers, meaning they won't have to worry about household chores. Cloud seedings will also be used to make rain clouds in the incredibly dry country, which is the size of Western Europe. The process involves dumping substances such as dry ice, using planes or drones into clouds to create rainfall. And of course, a lot of this is Israeli technology. And there's some other bizarre proposals in this as well, including a city for dinosaur robots. So yeah, if you're a fan of robots and stuff and want to see robots living again, then visit Neom. It says, in a Jurassic Park style attraction, robot martial arts, where the machines will fight each other for entertainment. Who needs to watch football anymore?
No, but the question is, like, how many films have we seen that depict this? And in any of them, where is it a good idea? Just all of this. It's
not following the Hollywood script, Reagan, on this one. Also, the kingdom wants to create a giant artificial moon, which will light up each night and serve as a major landmark. We also see that MBS recently declared that he wanted the sand on the city's proposal to be Silver Beach to glow in the dark. I mean, the vision and the expense is beyond imagination.
The moon, Simon. Like, what's the problem with the actual moon? I mean,
doesn't give enough light.
Come on.
Right, so the other thing they want to do as well is it builds itself as a futuristic metropolis where residents will live in a 110-mile-long skyscraper, a floating city, and a high-tech mountain resort. And the 110-long desert skyscraper will be clad in mirrors, will have its own high-speed railway, a sports stadium, and vertical gardens where vegetables are harvested by robots. And finally, a leaked architectural design claimed that the Mirror Line, an entire city of 5 million people, built on stilts as high as the Empire State Building, will be the largest structure in the world to have a bend to the curvature of the Earth.
it sounds sterile and soulless. I've already indicated what my feelings are on this. The mirror line is mooted to cost around $1 trillion and has no set completion date, but experts think it would likely take as long as 50 years. The kingdom is vastly rich, of course, and it's currently enjoying a massive windfall revenue from the very high oil prices, which while they reached record low prices in 2020, they are now at record high prices, about 3 times the price of what they were in 2020. While millions of dollars are spent on architects, futurists, and Hollywood production designers, there's the Hollywood script. It's following something Hollywood-esque. According to Bloomberg, all of this is ongoing like that. Vertical farming will be integrated into the buildings so that residents who will pay a subscription fee to have 3 meals a day will have their vegetables autonomously harvested and bundled and taken into their co-living kitchens, according to the Wall Street Journal. So, you and I are used to maybe paying for a subscription to Amazon Prime or Netflix or something like that, or you might have one of these food box prescriptions.
I have one of those.
Here you are paying a subscription fee to have 3 meals a day, and everything seems to be prepared for you in a very robotic sort of way.
And of course, this is going to be the new location for Newcastle United Football Club. No, hopefully I'm joking there. But it says here that a sports stadium will sit 984 feet above the ground.
Explain this. Explain that. What's going on above the ground? How can you sit above the ground?
Because I think it's on the top.
On stilts?
Yeah, so it's going to have to be on top of the actual building. So, just imagine, and this is hard to imagine, without actually, with the video in front, it's essentially a 115-mile line that is the height of the Empire State Building. It's 200 meters wide, which is not very wide in comparison to do this. So I guess what they want to do is kind of build this stadium either above the line or next to the city, which is actually on high ground, so you get all the views of the line and the harbour they're trying to create and everything else. So yeah, this is something that they actually want to create, which will connect with the high-speed train that I talked about, and also have a marina where residents can dock their yachts and run between the 2 buildings. So they think that if the mirror line is successfully completed, it will run from the Gulf of Aqaba through a mountain range, which will house the Saudi government, and into the desert plains, according to the documents. It's built as a Star Wars style city, built on a 115-mile straight line with 0 cars, 0 streets, 0 carbon emissions. You can fulfill all your daily requirements within a 5-mile walk. You can travel from end to end within 20 minutes, as MBS Cooley explained to this last January. So, this is crazy. I mean, it really is a kind of very futuristic ideal of the future, all depending on everything going well. But you're going to feel pretty much like a prisoner, trapped in this artificial intelligence dominated city where your every movement is monitored and tracked. You won't have cash because everything will be digital. These drones will come and deliver your food packages or your 3 meals a day. And I think anyone living here would feel pretty much claustrophobic, I think.
We talked about the sterility and soullessness of it, but I also think there's a real measure of insecurity as well. I think there's a real measure in which, and there will be people who are concerned by everything's being run by AI and artificial intelligence and whatnot. How is that going to go? How is that going to work?
Well, I mean, what if they can have a power cut?
Well,
what happens then if there's a major power shortage and what have you, relying upon renewable energy, you're relying upon AI technology for your food, that doesn't work, that breaks down, the trains don't work, and you're stuck in the middle of a desert without any kind of food supplies or natural water resources, could become really dangerous. Now, what's so interesting as well is this new train they're proposing that hasn't even been built yet. So it wants to reach speeds up to 317 miles per hour. The average speed needed to travel 115 miles in 20 minutes. The line will also use what's known as hyperloop or maglev trains. Two similar technologies which use magnets to hurl passengers towards their destination. Neither looks plausible by 2030. Virgin Hyperloop, in collaboration with Tesla's Elon Musk and Richard Branson, is likely to be their choice. And we also mentioned the fact that Saudi Arabia has been chosen to host the Asian Winter Games in 29 in the mountains near the 500 billion plus futuristic city known as Neom.
Yeah, it's really incredible. I mean, in the city itself, they're talking about this high-tech mountain range. How do you have a high-tech mountain range?
Artificial snow.
Yeah, what if it all breaks down, like you said? Then you're left with catastrophic flooding. And I'm sure they've thought through all of these things to some degree, but it's all incredibly fake. It's all an artificial existence. There's nothing organic, authentic, or genuine about it, which is something that I think as Christians matters. Authenticity, genuineness. This is some of the stuff you can look at and say is genuinely neat, and that's quite cool. That can be applied in various ways, but it also seems unduly experimental, and with the heavy AI robotic presence, lacking any soul. I mean, we have to remember robotics, however human they are, they lack that one thing that makes us human, that we're made in the image of God. We have a soul. There's communication. There's a range of variables in that communication that aid and add to life. This, again, I submit, it seems maybe it is the city of the future, but it is a dystopian city of the future. Yeah,
and of course, one of the great dangers of this one, it's all very well when you're living in a democracy and there's freedom and you actually use that technology for the advancement of mankind. But if you have an authoritarian regime in place, then your every footstep, your every movement is completely monitored. Your bank accounts would then be completely frozen because it's a digital currency, and you've got no means of escape. You wouldn't be able to use any of the transport system. You certainly wouldn't be able to fly out of Neom. You'd pretty much be a prisoner in this area, and of course that's one of the major problems with all of this, is that our dependency on technology is pushing us towards authoritarianism.
Well, thankfully,
where individuals such as Elon Musk and other high-tech, multi-billionaires that run Google and Facebook and our internet giants will control every aspect of our life. And if our views do not hold up with their liberal interpretation of the world and their secular humanist agenda, then we'd feel foul of that, and we would be completely cut off from this entire economic system and vision of the future.
With no recourse to legal defense in some cases, I'm sure, with no right representation for defense in those cases. If the world goes that way, as it appears to be headed towards, it will be very, very difficult times for God's people. And yet we have to always remember Jesus promises there will be these times of difficulty, but take heart, I have overcome the world. This is not the end of it. So I don't want viewers to be depressed or disturbed or lose sleep. Your rest is not in the building of or lack of building of cities like this. Your rest is in Jesus Christ. And so keep looking to Him and praying, taking these things to Him. But I mean, thankfully, Simon, we can say that Neom, it's probably not going to be all that bad, because Saudi has an amazing human rights record. And that they will definitely be treating everyone with the fairness and the righteousness that is so part of the Judeo-Christian worldview.
Well, this is why they're struggling to attract any kind of Western investment. This is why they're struggling to get Google to invest, Tesla to invest, the owners of Twitter and our social media companies also to invest in Neom, because of the religious conservative values of Saudi Arabia. It doesn't actually fit with their ideology. So of course, you know, this is a different Saudi Arabia than the one that probably from 10 years ago. And we can also see, for example, where this fits into kind of Bible prophecy, really. That what we're seeing, I think, with Saudi Arabia now, and particularly in the Middle East, and particularly if we see the revolution continue in Iran, that could actually bring the downfall of the Islamic clerics in Tehran, would be a new moderate Middle East, where the power shift of radical political Islam has shifted from the Middle East to that of Europe. And so therefore I think central to these plans of Neom is the investment and cooperation of Israel, because the Saudis will want Israeli technology. The Saudis have already invested something like 100 billion in Israeli infrastructure and technology and innovation. And they're just waiting probably for the right president to come along that would back the Saudis, and then they'll make a peace treaty with Israel. And you can see that Israel will be living in a time of peace and safety, just as it says in Ezekiel 38 and 39. So I think this is where this kind of fits into Bible prophecy. But of course, you're right, when it comes down to human rights records, there are serious question marks. For example, as I mentioned earlier in the program, the building workers that'll be building this project are going to have to deal with extreme heat and extreme cold, which is going to result in kind of unnecessary deaths in building this project, as we saw with the Qatar World Cup that is due to take place next month. We also see, for example, where Mohammad bin Salman's word says, "Live where people come first," showcased on the banner for Neom's official website. And what it fails to mention, however, is that the mega city's construction requires the internal displacement of 20,000 people belonging to a local Saudi tribe. And it's their treatment that I think the world is turning a blind eye to.
Yeah, allowing women to drive is definitely not enough to show trustworthiness in regard to humanitarian concerns. The liberal promises of Neom do stand in stark contrast with current conservative and traditional regime ruling the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So the question has to be asked, will they be making such a dramatic shift? The report we saw a little bit ago was talking about how they're wanting to advance tourism, they're wanting to show especially the historical side and the beauty to Saudi Arabia. This doesn't necessarily fit into that. It seems utopian, but it seems, while this futuristic utopian project could have some benefits, it also is going to almost certainly be plagued by human rights violations and environmental issues from within. The project itself is daring, it's extremely ambitious, but at what cost?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, drawing to a kind of conclusion is that I think it's very similar to what's happening in China, with the way that China has built their kind of, 500 million face recognition spy cameras that are spying on their entire population, with their social credit system, meaning that they're good citizens and they obey the state, then they get awards. But if they are disobedient against the state, then they face serious repercussions. And I think this will be a form of kind of police state, where everyone is controlled, because everyone's movements, everyone's actions are all monitored by cameras and face recognition cameras, 24/7, every day, every minute, whether by their phones, by their computers, within their own apartments where they'll be living in, when they go out of their apartments, whatever they do, their whole entire life will be kind of monitored and being in a bubble. And we can also see that this is where the world is heading to. And of course, the Bible makes it very clear in Revelation 13 that everyone will be forced to receive the mark of the beast in the tribulation period. And this technology is vital to that of the Antichrist, to create a world government, so in which he will control every population in the world. And he can only do that through this use of technology. And of course, what Satan has always wanted from the very beginning is to be omnipresent, to see everything and everywhere at the same time. And what this technology does is allow him to do that. And of course, this is the futuristic city of the future that could easily become London, Manchester, New York, Paris of the future.
We're already seeing some of that authoritarianism showing itself. There are 20,000 people, members of the Huayti tribe, who are being internally displaced by this, by force. There has been promise of compensation. I mean, the headline, Mohammed bin Salman's words concerning Neom is it's where people come first, but that internal displacement has not been followed up with, from what we understand, in regards to any sort of compensation. Indeed, how have the people been compensated? Well, there's been a handful of leaders within the Huayti tribe who have actually been condemned to death because of their refusal to leave the site, the property that they've had for however long that's rightfully theirs. So, you know, we can look at what's going on here and say already there are extreme concerns. The tribe leader, Abdul Rahman al-Huwaiti, voiced concerns and criticized the project on YouTube in April 2020. He was shot dead by security forces shortly after. And it demonstrates that Neom is not the solution here. Instead, it actually may be a real prototype of a city which, Simon, when I first saw the video, I felt this is like a modern day Babel of sorts. And so I think when we look at this, we can see even things like that artificial moon, glow-in-the-dark sand. This is mankind trying to set its course, be the master of its fate, the captain of its soul, trying to forge its own way and show it's excelled, it's arrived, it's attained some creative power unknown. And as Babel imploded, I believe this project also and others that follow that same Babel-esque model, they too, Scripture promises, will fall.
Absolutely, and I think this is also a kind of glimpse into this dystopian future that we're all heading towards, particularly as it's based around a digital currency and living in a cashless society where everything is controlled, and how our lives are becoming increasingly controlled and influenced by the influence of artificial intelligence. Technology and innovation are driving our lives without any proper accountability put in place. And of course, this technology is driving us towards an authoritarian future, as the Bible predicts it would do. So I think this is another kind of reminder to us all that we are living in the last days, that we are not far away from the tribulation period, whether that's 5, 10, 15 or 20 years. We're almost at the dawn of the history of mankind. And I think this city, as you rightly say, is very reminiscent of the Tower of Babel, and also of the potential spirit of Babylon, in the way that it offers utopia, but the reality is nothing but authoritarianism.
Well, thank you, Simon, for joining on the program. It's been great to be a part of it with you as we've considered this. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in to this week's edition of Behind the Headlines. When we see stories like this story of the city of Neom, we need to fundamentally look and we can say, wow, it's amazing. God's given us creativity, science, and He's enabled us to be creative. At the same time, we do need to think deeply through the ethical and moral and spiritual ramifications of this. There are many concerns that we have and that we've expressed in this program. I encourage you to take some time to think and pray through some of these matters. And above all, check where you are in your relationship with the Lord, and use conversations even about this city that will be happening in the future to launch other conversations toward the gospel hope that we have with others. It's been good to have you on the program this evening, and we'll hope to see you soon. God bless you and good night.